Good evening, my fellow Americans.
We're at war with the most dangerous enemy that has ever faced mankind in his long climb to the stars.
The disastrous rise of misplaced power exists.
All we have built, all we have worked for, would be destroyed.
There is nothing the political establishment will not do.
And this nation will not be fully free until all its citizens are free.
Our arms must be mighty, ready for instant action,
These criminals cannot be rewarded.
so that no potential aggressor may be tempted to risk his own destruction.
There is a point beyond which they must not advance.
They're coming after you, and I'm just standing in their way. Here I am.
You and I have a rendezvous with destiny.
The cost of freedom is always high.
Those who had the most to lose did the least to prevent its happening.
Our movement is about replacing a failed and corrupt political establishment.
Well, I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the founding fathers.
This is a crusade! This is a holy war against the deep state!
We never wanted to be right, but yet things are all adding up to the firestorm.
America is a land of heroes, a place where greatness is, where destinies are forged, and where legends come to life. This is the home of Thomas Edison and Teddy Roosevelt, of many great generals, including Washington, Pershing, Patton, and MacArthur. This is the home of Abraham Lincoln, Frederick Douglass, Amelia Earhart, Harriet Tubman, the Wright brothers, Neil Armstrong, and so many more. This is the country where children learn names like Wyatt Earp, Davy Crockett, and Annie Oakley. This is the place where the Pilgrims landed at Plymouth and where Texas patriots made their last stand at the Alamo. The American nation was carved out of the vast frontier by the toughest, strongest, fiercest, and most determined men and women ever to walk on the face of the earth. Our ancestors braved the unknown, tamed the wilderness, settled the Wild West, lifted millions from poverty, disease, and hunger, vanquished tyranny and fascism, ushered the world to new heights of science and medicine, laid down the railroads, dug out the canals, raised up the skyscrapers. Our ancestors built an exceptional republic ever in all of human history, and we are making it greater than ever before. This is our glorious and magnificent inheritance. We are Americans, we are pioneers, we are the pathfinders. We settled the new world, we built the modern world, and we change history forever by embracing the eternal truth that everyone is made equal by the hand of Almighty God. America is the place where anything can happen. America is the place where anyone can rise. And here, on this land, on this soil, on this continent, the most incredible dreams come true. This nation is our canvas, and this country is our masterpiece. We look at tomorrow and see unlimited frontiers just waiting to be explored. Our brightest discoveries are not yet known. Our most thrilling stories are not yet told. Our grandest journeys are not yet made. The American age, the American epic, the American adventure has only just begun. Our spirit is still young, the sun is still rising, God's grace is still shining, and my fellow Americans, the best is yet to come.
All right. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you're in the world. My name is Josh. Welcome to the Red Pill Project's Daily Dose, live with you Monday through Thursday, 8:30 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. This is where we bring you the unfolding global conspiracy. And tonight we are talking about the Black Swan event inbound. We are talking about the firestorm that we have been preaching for the last 4 years. Everything from global economic meltdown to the precursors of World War III to the social and cultural destabilization to the political uniparty wars that we're seeing break out right now. Everything is on the table, and it is it's a fire sale event. That's what we're seeing, and we're seeing in the geopolitical situation, or at least in the political situation here in the United States, we're seeing panic in DC, people. And this is interesting. This is something that I've never witnessed before, in the sense of how much fear there is within the eyes of politicians, within the deep state. The deep state is in deep panic because they are being rightfully exposed. But always remember that we're not talking about the deep state in its entirety. We're talking about a transition of power of the deep state, of the bureaucracy of what is happening. That's why we have these people that have infiltrated the Trump campaign, and we'll talk about some of that later. But, last week we had some interesting events that happened economically. We had the Dow, which crashed down, the NASDAQ that had its worst day within 20 years. The Bank of Japan had raised interest rates, which caused a whole bunch of carry trades to have calls on them, to where people had to go out there and sell off a lot of their U.S. tech stops. And this is not people, this is institutions, which caused a downfall in the market decline. That is only one of many different situations that can transpire economically with everything that we're seeing. And this is why I wanted to talk about the Black Swan event today, because the Black Swan events are typically economic type events that occur that can crumble a society. Very similar to what happened in 1929, 1984, what happened in 2008. These are these Black Swan type of events that provide opportunity for the people with money and the wealth transference of good, hardworking American people, pension funds, 401ks, to the rich elite and the wealthy. Well, there's one thing out there that we've talked about for a long time to hedge yourself against these types of events, because we know that when this Black Swan event comes, something is going to skyrocket in value. And that has historically been gold. I can't say it anymore, guys. We know this, that gold is that one hedge against inflation, that's one hedge against a declining market value. As well as if we look at the BRICS nations are developing this integrated new system for monetary exchange, of which will be based upon blockchain technology, but then also based on physical, real gold assets. And China, India, and Russia have been buying up more gold than you can ever imagine. And so the potential for a Black Swan event is at its highest alert, I think, that it's been probably since 2008, especially with this idea that potentially we might not have an election. Potentially they might scorch this earth. Potentially they could do a lot of different things between now and November 5th or now and January 20th. So I've been talking about how you guys can get out there and get invested in gold. I'm going to bring in my next guest. It's Joe JaQuint. He is the CEO of Patriot Trading Group. We utilize Patriot Trading Group for about 6 months now. So I wanted to get you guys introduced to Joe and kind of hear from him of what they do to help you guys, but also talk about the economy, what we are seeing, these bubbles that are forming and how potentially they could burst. So let's welcome to the show, Joe. I'm going to bring him in. Joe, what's up, man? How are we doing today?
Josh, how are you, man? Can you hear me okay?
Can hear you well. Thank you.
Good, good. Thanks for having me. Really excited to talk to your listeners about what's been going on. Love the intro, by the way. Love that, it's something where I think for most of us Americans out there, this is what we want to believe. This is the land of opportunity. This is the land where great things can happen. And they've given it all away. And what we're talking about Black Swan events. You talked about what happened last week, talking about the BRICS nations. And this just happens throughout history, right? We people out there don't really understand that the global elite behind all of this they set the stage up. This is kind of the I hate to say it, but kind of the end of the high parts of the American economy, America as the elite global power. You're seeing, you mentioned China, India, Russia, so many other countries, pretty much uh, most of OPEC in the Middle East, Africa now wanting to be part of BRICS. They want their seat at the table. And quite simply put, the powers that be, this is what they do. You talk about World War III, we're sitting so close to it. And usually that's how they do it. America really became prominent through the world wars. You think about World War One, we kind of started the journey as the superpower. World War II, Bretton Woods kind of established America as the place to be. The dollar got used as the reserve currency of the world. Kind of they anointed us the leaders of the world, and now it seems like they're getting ready to say, hey, guess what, the stage at the very least needs to be shared. And obviously with China, India, Russia, they don't want to share the stage, they want to be the stage. Josh,
You're absolutely right. And, we're seeing this massive transition of global economic power. It's very similar to what we saw at the end of World War II. Many people don't know there's a lot of behind the scenes deals that occurred at the end of World War II, the Bretton Woods agreements being one of these, which in 1933, an atrocity happened in this country specifically. This was the Emergency Banking Act, as well as House Joint Resolution 129. For those out there in the audience who are wondering what the House Joint Resolution 129 is, this is the enactment of Congress to basically state that Federal Reserve notes can be utilized as a legal tender in currency, eliminating the need for gold certificates and silver certificates as a backing of the U.S. dollar. At the same time, they had the Gold Confiscation Acts that came out through the Emergency Banking Acts. Now, I love the historical context of this because you don't learn this in history school. No one teaches this. 1913, the Federal Reserve was created on December 24th with only 2/3 of Congress in session. They were on a 20-year charter. 1929, we had the stock market crash. One thing that people don't realize is we had something called the Roaring Twenties that occurred before that. What happened during the Roaring Twenties is the Federal Reserve Bank loaned basically interest-free money out to smaller banking institutions, family-owned banks, and they couldn't get rid of the money. Nobody wanted it. So they had to offer the loans out at almost 0% interest. But the farms, the families, they collateralized the loans. This produced the Roaring Twenties where people went on buying frenzies, buying land, expanding their farms until 1929 when the bankers called in all of those loans, crushed those small family-owned banks, took all the collateral, had a massive transference of wealth. This started the beginnings of the Great Depression. And then, what is that? 4 years later, 1933, the 20th anniversary, the end of the Federal Reserve Charter, the United States is bankrupt because of what just happened. And what do the bankers do? They say, hey, by the way, in the Federal Reserve Act, it states right here that all debts must be paid in what? Gold. They confiscate the gold. The Federal Reserve takes back that over, signs a 100-year charter from that point on. We go into World War II. That massively increases the GDP almost instantly within that 10-year period. It started over in Europe before, obviously, but it took a little while to come out of the Great Depression, World War II, and now we go into the Bretton Woods Agreement. And then as well, we ended that, 69 to 72 time frame, and this is when the fiat dollar came into place. But people have to understand that this whole system was set up in the sense of a transition of global power, of how global power is organized and how politicians are controlled and how people are controlled. And that comes about with the value of your money, of what your money can do, and the wealth of a nation. And right now we are under the same influence that is going on once again, is there's a massive transference of wealth that is being set up. We've had it in 2008. We had it in 2011. Now we're having it again right now that is being set up to where people who are in 401ks, people who are, long on these IRAs, people who are in these state pension funds, they're going to lose their asses when this market comes crumbling down. I mean, BlackRock, they oversee $121 trillion in assets through their software systems, right? They just joined up with Citadel Capital, which is one of the largest hedge funds on the world, to start a new stock exchange in Texas. If that's not a red flag of Wall Street and what the hell's going on there, I don't know what is.
You know, really great points. And this is the opportunity that presents itself when I talk to all of our listeners and my customers on our show. You know, it's the system that they've set up, these boom and bust cycles. Who's going to be the balance of power? You have to be more diversified now than ever before. You know, you go back to '87. You go back to the .com bubble. Then you had the housing crisis, the financial crisis that came after it. And we're getting ready to go through this next one, but this one here, the biggest one of them all, because now all of a sudden the amount of U.S. debt, the issues that we're having in these treasury markets, you talked about what was going on with Japan, and we're getting ready for what's next, for the end of fiat money. And of course, the end of fiat money, China, India, Russia, they're going to get a seat at the table. And really what happens for the former powers, you go back, you look at powers before us, Portugal, Spain, England, and then so on and so forth. The standard of living falls dramatically, and that's about what is getting ready to happen here. We're seeing it happen here. Most people can't afford a home anymore. Even a new car for most people is now out of reach. And this is just kind of what's happening. And for everybody that knows what's going on and gets prepared ahead of time, here's the great thing. When crashes come, listen, all crashes, they suck, right? Nobody likes it. No one liked the financial crisis. You didn't like it when your neighbor lost their house or your neighbor had to move. They lost their jobs. No one likes any of those things that happen. But if you prepare for it ahead of time, Josh, the opportunity is there to capitalize on these crashes. Warren Buffett, when does he make all his money? It's not during the good times. It's during the crashes. And you're seeing him do that right now. I mean, he's unloading stock as fast as he can right now because he's getting ready for when this next crisis happens. And that's what everybody needs to be doing right now, is getting ready, getting diversified, making sure that they're going to be able to have something where when this thing comes crashing down, they'll have the resources to actually benefit from what's going to happen next.
You mentioned Warren Buffett there, and Warren Buffett's mentor, I think his name was Ben Sanders, wrote an amazing book on this. And he was good friends with another gentleman by the name of Sir John Templeton. Sir John Templeton, if people don't remember, he was an Englishman and American. His mother was American and his father was English, but he came to the United States of America, and during World War II, he went over, fought for World War II, came back 4 years later, and used the $10,000 that he had saved up for serving in World War II and bought every stock that was trading under $1 on the stock market. Within a decade, Sir John Templeton made millions upon millions of dollars. He then reinvested that money and became a multi-billionaire, becoming one of the first people to invest in a place called the Silicon Valley and then in Mao Zedong's China. And he came out with a quote, which, whether this guy was a globalist or not, I don't think it matters, but this quote is important. He said that I made my money during the times of greatest pessimism. And that's what we're talking about, is right now are the opportunities. I talk about cryptocurrency, and I know a lot of people are afraid of central bank digital currencies. They're afraid of centralized digital currencies. But when they start to understand decentralized digital currencies and how they operate, the potential there becomes incredibly massive. The things that Satoshi Nakamoto, the so-called founder of Bitcoin, what they actually talked about and sought out to do was actually pretty profound, because it removes the need for a centralized monetary system, for a centralized banking authority to regulate and drive out policy, to even push woke ideologies onto people when it comes to spending your money, or where you keep your money, or the rates at which you're going to get on your money. And so we are in this very pessimistic time, economically, but it's also a time of massive opportunity for people. And the one thing that I've always seen, Joe, that's held its weight in gold is gold. Historically, it is one thing. And it was interesting. I had a gentleman on the other day, and we were talking about gold, and he was talking about how it's interesting that the Federal Reserve was just talking about the U.S. gold buyback program that was happening, and that they are selling it to them at $45 an ounce. I said, well, that came out of the Bretton Woods Agreement, that came out of the 1933 Emergency Banking Act, where the Federal Reserve pegged the price of gold at $45 an ounce. And since the 1940s, that has not changed. So the U.S. holds maybe a few $100 billion worth of gold, but that is all priced at $45 an ounce and will never increase from that moment, because that is the ounce per price, or the price per ounce that the U.S. pays its debts to in the Federal Reserve. But anyways, going into this, people have to understand there's a gold buying frenzy going on right now. India, Russia, China, multiple other countries. Countries are also pulling their gold and their other precious metals away from the various storehouses, London, Australia, so forth, pulling them back into their countries. We've only seen this historically one other time, and that was previous to World War II actually breaking out.
Yeah, great point. A lot of the countries before World War II broke out, right? They sent that gold to the United States, and that's where it stood. Most people don't realize, because like you said, they don't teach it in the history books. They don't want you to know this, but after World War II, when the United States fixed that gold price, we had almost 20,000 metric tons of gold. By the time Richard Nixon closed the gold window in 1971, we were down to 8,000 metric tons, because all the world wanted their gold back. And now we're seeing something that literally we haven't seen in history. Central bank gold buying is shattering records. They've never bought so much gold before. The amount of countries requesting and having their gold shipped back to them, it's been unprecedented. And this is kind of happens because the United States, let's be honest, when countries do things that we don't like, we like to weaponize not only the dollar, we like to weaponize gold holdings with Venezuela, Russia, the most recent, where they just want to say, hey, you know what? We're not going to let you have access to your gold. We're not going to let you have access to the SWIFT system. And now we're seeing the rest of the world saying, hey, you know what? We can do something outside of that. That's where BRICS comes in. China has developed their own SWIFT system. CHIPS is what it's called. Right now, they have over almost 1,400 banks and countries a part of this. I mean, the SWIFT system has 11,000 banks, but you got to remember, this thing only started a year ago, and they've already got 10% of the world behind them, and it grows every single day. And it's something where most people, all as they know is, well, I just look at Wall Street, I see where the Dow or the S&P and the NASDAQ's at, and as long as they're near the highs, I think everything's okay. But behind the scenes, Josh, a lot of things are happening that are really putting the United States in a hard position, because we have so much debt that we need to sell every single day, every single month, every single year. And people don't even realize less and less people are showing up to these auctions. And every week there's always a stumble in our debt markets where we have big tails. We don't have enough people wanting to buy the debt for what we want them to buy it for. And it's only a matter of time. Bank of America just 2 weeks ago, we're one crisis, one shock away from our treasury markets not operating, not operating properly. And if people thought Monday was a bad day and the Dow was down 1,000 or 1,200 points, you have a debt market, a U.S. Treasury market not operating properly. You're talking about what happened in Japan. Japan, that market fell 12% in a single day.
Yeah. And that's with its circuit breakers. That's right. With the systems that they put in to make sure that it doesn't crash. You know, Joe, I'm curious, what are your thoughts on a black swan event that potentially could come in the next 6 months? And I say that because there's a lot of things happening geopolitically. I mean, we have We have Russia, we have China, we have the potential war in the Middle East, we have war in Eastern Europe, we have European countries right now on the brink. I mean, their people are rising up. We have the horrible policies that are coming down from ESG, environmental, social, and governance, that drip down from the World Economic Forum, from the United Nations Sustainable Development Community, down into the financial institutions, down into the governments, and then to the farmers who are revolting. Economically, the European nations aren't doing very well. The Middle East is in turmoil again. The Asian markets are hyperinflated, just as bad as the U.S. markets. The Federal Reserve is pumping trillions upon trillions of dollars directly into the debt market. You look at the reverse repo market for anybody out there who's wondering about this. Basically, the Federal Reserve is buying up all this bad corporate debt that fund these corporations for stock buybacks. And this is the reason that our cycle keeps on growing and growing and growing, and the Dow keeps on going up and up and up and up. It's not that you and me are out there buying. It is that mysterious money is just being funneled into the system to keep it going, to keep it propped up, to look like something actually good is happening. I mean, the Biden administration today came out with economic numbers saying that inflation had dropped to 2.3%. And this is the most ridiculous fucking thing I've ever heard in my life, because anybody who's been to the grocery store, everybody who's been to the gas station, anybody who's went out there and paid rent or mortgage understands that inflation has not come down one damn bit. If anything, it has increased, and the real inflation numbers are more near 22 to 23 to 24%. And what we're getting out of the federal government is nothing but a load of garbage and bullshit. But that's what happens. They'll put these numbers out there. They'll put the unemployment numbers out there, the economic numbers, right? And then 3 months later, they'll go back and correct them and show that, oh, look, we did lose 1% in GDP last month. And it's a scary situation when you have increasing inflation and decreasing GDP, because that produces a situation known as stagflation, which we have been in for the last 4 quarters, the last whole year. We've been in that situation, which means that we are already in an economic recession. We're headed towards a Great Depression, exactly what Donald Trump just said. And it's only going to take one single event. It doesn't even need to be economic, but the economies will crash because of the reaction to that. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, and I think this is the big problem, because when you look at what one event could it be, it's almost uncountable. We don't know what the spark will be. You know, when we look at the crash of the financial crisis, right? Well, it started, you know, but a lot of people say, well, it started with the housing crisis. And really, it started well before that. But then the housing crisis led to a bond crisis. It led to a derivatives crisis, which led to a financial crisis. And now here we sit today, and I think that the problem is the same thing exists, but the amount of debt is so much bigger than what it used to be. You know, you go back to 2005, 2004, 2006, 2000, the debt was, you know, 5, 6, 7, 8 trillion. Well, it's 35 trillion now. So unfortunately, we live in the boom and bust cycle, and we're getting ready. All the warning signs, we're seeing the volatility in stock markets. We're seeing things like what happened in Japan. We're seeing the war drums beat. We're seeing problems in the treasury auctions, commercial real estate. Now, all of a sudden, you know, when you get companies like Walgreens and CVS and Big Lots, and they're coming up, they don't close. Hey, we're closing 10 stores. No, we're closing hundreds of stores. We're bankruptcy filings are all skyrocketing again. And this is the thing that's scary. And I love how you brought this point up, Josh. It doesn't have to be, you know, oh, this bank went under or this thing happened. We don't know what it will be, but one spark, it's like a domino effect. And once one of the dominoes go, the rest of them follow suit. And when we look at things like yield curves, inverted yield curves, this is the longest inverted yield curve of all time. The previous big ones, financial crisis, really go back to the 80s. That was the third biggest. The financial crisis, the second longest. The Great Depression was the longest. This inverted yield curve that we've been living in for the last, we're coming up now on almost 4 years plus of inverted yield curve. This is the longest in history, and that just tells us the bust is going to be the biggest in history.
It absolutely is. And, Klaus Schwab in 2014, who's one of the founders and the chairman of the World Economic Forum, he wrote a book called The Fourth Industrial Revolution. And in that, he talked about the aspect of the Great Reset, in that how generationally, 72 to 90 years, we go through what's known as a fourth turning, prescribed by two gentlemen, Strauss and Howe, which were Columbia University historian professors that looked at the last 500 years of history after the collapse of the Roman Empire. And what they saw is with every 72 to 90 years, there was a generational collapse to where economically everything would begin to reset. To where the shift of global power would transition from those who were prepared and moving up to those who were in power and away from them. And 2014, he talked about what the new world is going to look like. And it was a scary sight, but there's a lot of things that he was right about in that. Not because he was shaping the world, but in the sense of how things are going to operate with the advancement of technology. Now, with that being said, is that we've known about these types of events for a long time, and we're getting to that point where something like this is going to happen. And I'm just curious, is it going to be Iran-Israel war? Is it going to be Russia-United States war after the proxies remove, or Russia-NATO war? Is it going to be China invading Taiwan, which seizing the Straits of Taiwan would absolutely produce a massive trade deficit globally that would have a great financial impact? The Middle East would be the OPEC and oil and gas prices skyrocketing and the market's going crazy. War in Eastern Europe. I mean, now you're talking about grain and corn and all these other things in the sense of everything that's traded through Eastern Europe ports. So we have an incredible situation here to where one little straw will break the camel's back, and that camel is gonna drop down in a heart attack with both of its legs fucking broken and its neck fucking snapping right when it hits the ground, because that is how severe of a situation that we have right now. And we know that the globalists on one side of the house, at least the side that I look at and I talk about, is politically, is it's not that they want this, they need this. They need this to happen because they are in a situation right now. Joe, I talked about this a few weeks ago with the attempted assassination attempt on Donald Trump. I'm one of those firm believers that states that the shooter didn't act alone, that this was a deep state operation or a foreign operation. Someone tried to take out Donald Trump, and it wasn't some 20-year-old kid. With that being said, whoever gave that go-ahead to take out Donald Trump on that day, they knew the result of what was going to happen the next week. They understood that if that bullet had shot and killed Donald Trump, that all-out protest, riots, and civil war would have broken out from that moment. And someone on the global elite level was ready for that to happen, and were willing and waiting and wanting that to happen. Which brings me to that understanding that if they were willing to do it then, they're willing to do it now, because not much has changed within that situation and that scenario.
I couldn't agree with you more, 100% on that. People don't know. World War II started with an assassination well before people even knew World War II was really starting or beginning. And this is coming, and this is how they do it. They've used war as a tool to bring about change, and major monetary changes in the world have come through war. And Josh, they're doing it again. The system, like you said, you're talking about a reset, right? They need to reset. It doesn't affect them. They need it, and they're getting ready to capitalize on this at the expense. Unfortunately for us, the expense will be the American people, the American citizens, because we're going to lose standard of living when this thing is all said and done. And obviously, where is it going to go right now? It's going to go to the East. It's going to go to China. It's going to go to India. It's going to go where the growth is, the population is, and they get to stay on top and continue to keep the power. That's what this is all about.
100%. Joe, I'm going to have you back on again, because I love talking to you, man. You're awesome, and you know your shit, so that's awesome as well. Guys, if you want to go visit Patriot Trading Group, All American Gold, you can go find them easily. Best way, give them a call. 1-800-951-0592. I had actually put the wrong number in there. I put 822. So by correction, my keyboard's been giving me shit. It's 800-951-0592. You can also email Double J at allamericangold.com. Or as always with the Red Pill Project, we forward this address over to All American Gold. It's so easy. GetGoldToday.com. You go to that and it'll take you all the way over to Joe's website. You can give them a call, email them directly from that website and see some information about their IRAs and what they also have. So Joe, appreciate you coming on with me tonight, my man.
Hey, Josh, glad to be here. Can't wait to be here again. And all of you out there listening, reach out to us. Let us know that you heard us from Josh, and we're going to take great care of you. God bless everybody. Have a good night. Thank you, Josh.
God bless you, Joe. Take care. All right, guys. You heard it there. I mean, listen, we have been watching all of this for a very long time as it's unfolding. Today, Tedros over at the World Economic Forum declared a monkeypox outbreak a global health emergency in Africa. And we know where this is going to go. We know that this is, and by the way, we haven't heard anything about bird flu in months. You remember a week before Trump's assassination was the last we heard about bird flu, because they were going to remove bird flu from the table. They were going to shoot Donald Trump, take that, allow that to rise up and be the talk of the town. But it didn't happen. So now they got to restart all that banter. So what are we going to do? Well, let's bring some monkeypox in Africa. Let's bring some bird flu in over here in the United States of America. Let's bring some yellow fever over here in Asia. How about some dengue over in South America? That's what you're going to see. You're going to see outbreaks of global epidemics within geographical areas. I've said this before. I've said this for fucking years. Monkeypox in Africa. You're going to have bird flu in the United States. You got to remember, your government just ordered a whole bunch of vaccines for it. Why? Because the moment that we step out of line, the moment that we stand up, rise up, speak up, the moment that we take to the streets, the moments that we start yelling at our politicians and demanding truth and justice, is the moment that a great pandemic overtakes the whole world, because they'll have one ready to go, right in the barrel, locked and loaded. And they will utilize it to quarantine us. They'll utilize it to imprison us. You don't believe me? How many states in the United States of America already have legislation on the books? New York State, Washington, Oregon, California. That's 4. Yeah, they're liberal. How about this? Kentucky, Tennessee, Florida. Oh, you didn't know about those. We called out DeSantis to when they put out legislation that stated that in the advent of a pandemic, the governor has full jurisdictional authority to quarantine any Florida citizen or any American citizen that he chooses without review of a doctor, by utilizing law enforcement or the National Guard, and quarantine them and vaccinate them. That shit's real. Game Tech and I have talked about for a while about the Department of Homeland Security and FEMA and the various different national exercises they're doing in various cities around the United States of America. These national exercises are all mass casualty exercises, of which they bring in massive amounts of materials. They bring in coffins, quarantine, camp procedures, all these types of things. They set it all up and they leave it there after the exercise is done. What are they preparing for? Well, what do you think they're preparing for? They're preparing for the moment that American citizens say enough is enough. They're preparing for the moment when they steal the 2024 election and American citizens get fucking pissed off and say this is enough. This is what they're preparing for. They have something up their sleeve and they're about to drop it. Their situation right now is either we're going to have the election or we're not going to have the election. It's one of those two things. And if they have the election, they're going to steal it. They're stealing the fucking polls. I mean, for goodness sakes, I just saw polls on Twitter. Kamala Harris is up 18 points over Donald Trump. 18 fucking points. Leading 68% of the vote. What? Donald Trump does an interview with Elon Musk on X. 1 billion fucking views. 100 million people watching the night. 8 million live streaming, okay? 70% of the audience, 25 to 35 years of age. Kamala Harris chooses Tim Walz, Minnesota's governor, as her vice presidential running mate. Broadcast it live on YouTube, the biggest streaming platform in the world. 554 people watching live. That's like saying that Joe Biden got 80 million votes in 2020. It makes no sense, and it's not true. It's more disinformation. It's more misinformation. You know, someone fucked up. Notorious global hacking group has possibly stolen every social security number in America and from billions of people worldwide. The Los Angeles Times has revealed alarming news on Tuesday that an astonishing amount of sensitive personal information was possibly stolen from 2.9 billion people around the world by the notorious global hacking group called US DoD in April. The company victimized by a group was a National Public Data, a significant data broker. Now a member of the group has reportedly released almost all of it for free on an online marketplace for stolen personal data. According to the Times, the information stolen includes possibly every social security number in America and every sensitive data. News of the hack was discovered in a lawsuit filed in the U.S. District Court of the Southern District of Florida. Your social security numbers are compromised. I wonder how they're going to cover this one up. And what happened? Oh, well, all of your personal PPI information that the government houses is stored by a third-party company that wasn't vetted thoroughly. Oh, go figure. They seem to hire those companies for voting and national defense as well. Maybe the government should build out its own systems to do these things and not hire or depend upon third-party contractors to do these types of things. Just saying. Something is going on here with Google. Now, we know a few weeks ago, the judge had ruled that Google was absolutely a monopoly in violation of antitrust laws. Now there's a big push for Google to break up Alphabet, its parent company. The Kamala Harris campaign admitted to conducting a massive online misinformation scheme with the help of Google. Google claims a glitch in its system, allowed the Harris campaign to run counterfeit headlines that appeared to originate from the Associated Press and Reuters. Google saying, "Oh, this was a glitch. We don't know how that happened." But don't you find it interesting that on the same day that it's realized that Kamala Harris campaign did that, Google claims it was a glitch. Google comes out and warns of ongoing Iranian hacking targeting U.S. presidential campaigns. Google revealed that Iran hacking operation linked to the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps continued to target the email accounts of U.S. officials and individuals associated with Biden, Kamala, and Trump. The hacking group has been attempting to breach personal email accounts, with Google observing ongoing but unsuccessful attempts even now. The tech giant has alerted law enforcement and urged both presidential candidates to strengthen their email security measures. Does anybody find that odd? I find that incredibly odd. Google has a glitch, and all of a sudden Google's like, "Oh, well, Iran's trying to hack us over here." We know it's not Iran trying to hack anybody. The last thing Iran wants to do right now is, number one, get into World War III. Number two is to poke the bear. And number three, I guess, is cause any type of strife globally. The reason being is Iran is flush with money. They're incredibly wealthy. They have an incredibly strong military system. And they are in with BRICS and just starting to get their feet in the water with back into the global economy. The last thing Iran wants right now is all-out jihad and war. The last thing they want to do is to piss off the United States of America by hacking their critical infrastructure and then producing World War III. We understand that it's most likely deep state operatives that are the ones that are causing these things to happen. And those deep state operatives utilize the systems provided by Alphabet and Google. Why? Because Alphabet is nothing more than a three-letter agency. funded originally by In-Q-Tel and DARPA and taken over by the Central Intelligence Agency. Google and Facebook and many of these other companies like such are nothing more than proxies for US and various different foreign intelligence services. And the technology that they develop is at the behest of these intelligence agencies. So when you start hearing about, oh, their Gmails are being hacked and all this stuff, you better damn well know that it ain't no foreign country doing that. If the foreign country wanted to do that, they would do that. But they would have to go through various different severe measures in order to do that. So I find it interesting, this Google connection that is coming out right now. There's something else going on here. And Donald Trump hinted at this about a week ago. Donald Trump came out and said, wouldn't it be interesting if Joe Biden showed up at the Democratic National Convention and contested the endorsement of Kamala Harris and said that he never stepped down? Donald Trump said that about a week ago. This last weekend, Joe Biden comes out and says, I don't know where that letter came from. I didn't write that letter. What? Then he says, I don't want to step down. Now Joe Biden apparently is in a war with Kamala Harris. White House says Kamala Harris is responsible for the dumpster fire economy and inflation as she tried to distance herself from Bidenomics. Now, Joe Biden, there's something going on here. And I'm going to go back to a theory that I had prior to this. And we can entertain the fact that it might not be real Joe Biden. Obviously, he's 4 inches taller. I get that. But there's something going on here. Joe kind of has a meltdown here when asked a question by a reporter. And I want you to watch this video. But then I want you to tell me what you notice about Joe Biden here. Check this out. Mr. President.
Yes. I told you we're going to have a soft landing. We're going to have a soft landing. My policies are working. Start writing that way, okay?
And Mr. President,
anyway, thank you.
So much. Thank you so much.
What did you notice about Joe Biden? And I've been noticing this the last few days when Joe Biden, every time we're seeing these clips of Joe Biden or Joe Biden talking, he's not pale. He's not frail. He doesn't look very sick at all. His speech is getting better and better and better. He made full, complete sentences of which you understood. He's able to stand on his own. He's looking around the room. His eyes weren't wandering. It's almost like Joe Biden doesn't have dementia anymore. Whoever that is doesn't have the plane of dementia anymore. And you know what? It could absolutely not be him. Who knows? But I'm sticking to my theory that Joe Biden called Donald Trump and cashed in the letter left on Joe Biden's desk on January 20th, 2020, of which Joe Biden claimed Donald Trump left him a very gracious, very generous letter. And Joe Biden traded it in. And that the endorsement of Kamala Harris when he stepped down was not supposed to happen. Barack Obama, Nancy Pelosi, that's not what they wanted. They did not want Kamala Harris endorsed. But that is what did happen. Now Joe Biden says, we don't know where that letter came from. Huh? Now we're hearing that Joe Biden might show up at the DNC. But now we're also seeing Joe Biden, who can speak full sentences. I want everybody to just put into their mind and understand that Joe Biden during 2008 and 2012 blackmailed Barack Obama. That's how he was able to get vice president, and that's how he was able to control the White House to a certain degree. Barack Obama, Barry Soetoro, is a very vengeful motherfucker. And in 2020, when he had his opportunity, he went in there and he began to blackmail Joe Biden. But I think the way that he did that, I'm going to throw the theory out there again. I think Obama drugged Joe Biden. I think the deep state drugged Joe Biden to make it look like he was weak, frail, sicker than he actually is. And that all curtailed, that all ended just recently. It's a theory. We have to watch Joe Biden over the next couple of weeks and see what's going on. But for some reason, you have Joe Biden against the Democrats, Kamala against a lot of the Democrats. You are watching the destruction of the Democratic Party. And it doesn't look like Joe Biden's working for Obama, the deep state, anymore. Obviously not working for Kamala. Obama and Pelosi and all of them, they had to go out there and embrace Kamala just because. But the DNC is next week, so it will be interesting to see what happens, because we could potentially come out of the DNC with another candidate, with Hillary Rodham Clinton. Who knows? Bullets have been flying lately. Just saying, throwing it out there. Socialist Bernie Sanders breaks his silence and exposes the Democrat establishment for allegedly sabotaging his presidential bid. That's what happens when you take on the establishment. Let's check this out. Let's be a good clip.
I ran in 16. I ran against Hillary Clinton, and I ran in 20.
Yeah, I remember, and I felt like you didn't get treated fairly, to be honest with you.
And that's what happens when you take on the establishment. So what happened is we won the first 3 primaries, and then the establishment got very, very nervous, and there were a whole lot of candidates in the Democratic primary, and they said, hey, it'd be a good idea if you all dropped out, let Joe Biden be the one candidate. People rallied around him.
And do they call? Is there a call that you get, and it's like you're not going to move forward? Is it just like news articles? Like how does the establishment?
Well, what happens is I won the popular vote in Iowa. I won the New Hampshire primary. I won the Nevada primary, and those were the first 3. And then front pages of the New York Times, Democratic establishment very nervous. Bernie Sanders could win the whole. We were doing very well in the polls, and I think behind the scenes, people thought there were like 15 different candidates. And they were splitting up the vote, and that's how I was not necessarily getting over 50%. I was getting more than other people, so I was on the way to victory. And they said, look, Bernie shouldn't be the candidate for a variety of reasons. We don't want him the candidate, drop out. And then on one day, a lot of people, 1 or 2 days, a lot of people dropped out. It was Joe Biden and me, and Joe had a lot of support, and all these people came behind him.
And do you think that our election process is still democratic? Do you think it's still?
Yes and no. I mean, you want to run for office. Can you? Yeah, you can. You got a certain number of signatures. But if you're going to win, and I have 10 times more money than you do, I will beat you 95% of the time.
Wow.
I mean, that's a fact, right?
Right, yeah, 100%.
You'll beat me. Maybe if you're really an exceptional candidate and I'm a real idiot, you will beat me once in a while. But by and large, the money people will win. So if you're asking me, are we a democracy? In one sense, we are. All right, you can run for office. You can raise your issues. On the other hand, in terms of who has the real power, money people do. And I use the term oligarchy. An oligarchy is a society where small numbers of very wealthy people control the economic and political life of the country. I think we are moving rapidly in that direction.
Yeah, I feel like to me, it feels like a almost privatized communism in a way.
Right. That's a very good point. It's an interesting way of looking at it.
Privatized communism. Bernie loved hearing that, huh? He's one of the wealthy, worth about $15 million. Bernie's telling the truth. Why? What happened? Did all of a sudden the grips of the deep state lessen on many different politicians? We're seeing politicians all over the United States speaking the truth about things. It's almost as if the influence and power of the deep state, of the bureaucracy, the shot heard around the world, the missed shot against Donald Trump, broke him. That somehow people like Bernie aren't afraid to speak up anymore. That other people aren't afraid to come forth. Kamala is running a campaign where the mainstream media is 100% in full endorsement, and she's got the backing of massive tech giants like Facebook and Google. But yet at every corner, it's being exposed as misinformation and disinformation, as absolute garbage. They're manipulating everything that they're putting out there and then blaming Donald Trump for the manipulation in the AI when they're utilizing AI photos and videos and headlines. And here's the thing is the whole world sees it. You can't tell the people. You got to show them. Isn't that the truth? And here's something to show you. Bombshell footage shows a cop carrying a bag into the DNC headquarters in Washington, D.C. on January 6th. About 15 minutes later, the famous pipe bomb was discovered. So now it's almost 100% confirmed that our own government was involved in a false flag operation to paint Trump supporters as domestic terrorists. No joke. Here's the video. You're going to see the cop pull up. And the question is who is this cop? That's what we should know. Who was this cop? Was this cop on the payroll? There he is right there. Could have easily have thrown it to the left, thrown it to the right. And here's the thing, is they have the full 24 hours of the video of that. That's the only guy in that close proximity that goes in there. Your government loves you, people. Go back to sleep. They'll take care of you. Everything's fine. Let the wolves be vegetarian. They will never eat meat again. Trump announced today that when he becomes president again, he plans to slash all electricity costs by 50 to 70% in 12 to 18 months. That is a massive, remarkable feat if he's able to do that. And the only way he's able to do that, which he knows how to do, is to ramp up coal mining all through Pennsylvania, all through the coal belt out there, as well as dig into the United States, dig into Alaska, and start producing U.S. energy. And he's absolutely right. That's going to produce cheap energy. And he's going to do it. And this is why Wall Street and big bankers are going to go out there and support Donald Trump. But see, the problem is that Donald Trump has all of the factions of the multi-headed Hydra supporting him. That's not the problem. On the other side of the house, you have this other faction, which is dying and crumbling. They're desperate, incredibly desperate. Now, I've been talking about Iran specifically. Why hasn't Iran attacked Israel? And we hear this every night. 24 hours, Israel says 24 hours, Iran's going to attack, and nothing happens. News reports are coming out, and this is from the Jerusalem Post. U.S. allegedly presented Tehran, Iran, a list of Mossad agents involved in the Haniyeh assassination, according to a report, as a method to stop World War III from breaking out. I'm telling you right now that whoever those U.S. agents were in Tehran who did that, they weren't sent there by Biden. They weren't sent there by anybody you know in the U.S. intelligence. This was the deep state operation. You got to remember, the one deep state operative that we know of, Barry Soetoro, Obama, Brennan, these ones are the ones that are friendly with Iran. They were the ones feeding them uranium through the Uranium One scandal. They were the ones giving them billions of dollars to go out there and build a nuclear bomb. They were the ones giving them the access to U.S. weapons technologies, drone technologies in 2012. So it would be natural. And by the way, they're also the ones that absolutely despise and hate Israel, which hate or love them, doesn't matter, but they do. So this was a deep state operation to go out there and save face because they know that the destabilization of the Middle East right now probably doesn't fit their best interest if they're not in control of the war. Interesting situation arising there. Russia is ready to execute nuclear attacks on NATO targets, according to leaked documents from the Russian Ministry of Defense. As in, Russia has now plans and equipment, munitions, launchers, nukes, everything all ready in a moment's notice to push a few buttons and hit NATO targets. Why? Because Russia is not playing around. This is not a fucking game. They have been very calm in their approach to what has been happening, but the United States, NATO, and Ukraine have crossed that red line multiple times before. The rumors are Ukraine has now gotten the F-16s and are planning F-16 runs into the middle of Russia to strike air bases. And when that happens, you can damn well be sure that NATO targets are going to get hit. Why? Because that was the big warning from NATO or from Russia saying don't. And it's like a game of Risk. Is you're setting up your pieces all around the globe. You're waiting, just waiting for that right moment. And when that right moment happens, all hell breaks loose. That is what we're leading up to quite literally right now. Interesting enough, Germany issues an arrest warrant for the Ukrainian diver who was connected directly with the Nord Stream explosions. Germany has issued a European arrest warrant against a Ukrainian diving instructor who allegedly was part of the team that blew up the Nord Stream gas pipelines. German investigators believe that this man, last known to have lived in Poland, was one of the divers who planted explosive devices on the pipeline running from Russia to Germany under the Baltic Sea in September 2022. The German prosecutor's office declined comment on the report, which said that Germany had asked Poland in June to arrest this man. This man has since disappeared. I thought it was Russia that did that. Wasn't it Russia? Guess not. All right, guys. Some information for you right here. Patriot Trading Group. Joe, if you want to give him a call or visit, please do 800-951-0592. You can email them at doublej@allamericangold.com. We can visit them, getgoldtoday.com. Best ways to get a hold of them. I'll be back with you tomorrow night. And also, if you guys have questions in the sense of 401ks, IRAs, rolling that stuff over into gold and want to talk about that, you can reach out to me directly. I'm very knowledgeable on these topics. I've helped people for over the last few years with all of this. redpillprojectonline@gmail.com. redpillprojectonline@gmail.com. Send me an email. We'll talk. Or if you're on the social Red Pill, send me a message there. We'll talk. But guys, listen, you guys are awesome. I got knocked off with the tech issues, a few other issues I have going on, but now we are back. We're rocking and rolling. The world is rocking and rolling. And don't be afraid. Don't be scared ever, because you know what? This is just a ride. Much love, respect. God bless, guys. Take care. Have a great night. We'll see you guys tomorrow.
Spoon, that's impossible. Only try to realize the truth.
What truth?
There is no spoon.